Hello everybody and welcome. In today's video we're going to be going over the rules of exponents and we are going to be going over 6 examples of those. So without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so briefly what we want to discuss are some of the rules. So if we're looking at the top left here, the power rule, all it's saying is that if you have an exponent raised by another exponent like this, all we do is we multiply those two numbers together. Alright, moving downwards, with the quotient rule, if your bases are the same and you have exponents on those, what you do is you can subtract the exponents here. Next one, going downwards, the power of quotient rule. So if you have a fraction and it's raised to an exponent, it's raised by an exponent, what you do is you can distribute this exponent uh, above both of those numbers or variables, like so. And looking at the top right, you have the product rule. And all this is saying is if your bases are the same, what you do with the exponents is you just add them together. All right. And then now we got the power of product rule. So if you have two numbers that are being multiplied to each other and they're all raised by an exponent, you can distribute this exponent into both of those variables there. And then we have the zero rule, which is saying that anything raised to the power of 0 is equal to 1. Okay, so now we're looking at the first three examples. So let's start with the top left one here. And whenever you have an exponent raised by another exponent, what you do with the exponents is you multiply them together. So when we do that, we'll get x to the fourth times 6. Okay, and simplifying that, we'll get x to the 24th power. And that is the first example. So now let's look at the middle one over here. So I'm going to break this up and kind of work it like two separate exponents, if that makes sense. So the first one we have is x squared raised to the 8th power. And whenever we have something raised, we multiply those numbers. So we got x to the 2 times 8. And that is going to be multiplied by x to the 5 times 3, like that. So simplifying a bit, we'll get x to the 16th times x to the 15th. All right, so now we have two, two variables that are both being raised by exponents. The bases are the same. So what we do with the exponents is we add them together. So what we get is x to the 16th plus 15th. All right, and we do that, what we will get is x to the 31st power. All right, so next up is the top right. So we have this exponent on the outside, the 7, and what we can do is distribute that to both of these exponents. And whenever you have an exponent raised by an exponent, you multiply. So this can be rewritten as m to the 8 times 7 times n to the 5 times 7, like that. And when we simplify that, we'll get m to the 56th power, n to the 35th power. And now the important thing to note is that these bases are not the same because you have a m and an n. And that's why we don't add those two exponents now. So this will be our final answer. All right, so our last three examples here. Let's start with the top left over here. So whenever you have exponents that are being divided by each other, what we do is subtract. So let's go ahead and do that. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And then what we have is x to the 16th minus 2 because you subtract those exponents whenever they're being divided by each other. So when we reduce that, we'll get x or 8x to the 14th power, just like that. And now this example is complete. So let's look at the middle one now. So we have this 5 that's raising everything inside. So we're going to go ahead and distribute that to everything. So what that's going to look like is a, and let me put a parenthesis here, a to the 8 times 5, since it's being raised, times b to the 9 times 5, all over 2 raised to the 5. You still have to include the 5 to even just numbers. And then we have c to the 2 times 5. All right, so now let's go ahead and simplify. So the top is going to be a to the 40, b to the 45th. 2 raised to the 5th power is 32. And then c is going to be c raised to the 10th power because you have the 2 times 5. Now that is going to be our final answer to that one. All right, so now let's look at the third one here. So we have all of this stuff that's going on inside, but it's being raised to the 0 power. Whenever anything is being raised to the 0 power, all it becomes is 1. So this right here just simplifies to 1. And that is our final answer.